world shimmered, not with the harsh glint of sun on ice, but with the soft internal glow of 1,000 hidden lanterns. In the lands of the Evermist, where the ancient trees grew so tall their highest branches tickled the bellies of passing clouds, light was a living, breathing thing. It pulsed in the moss that carpeted the forest floor, a gentle emerald heartbeat. It spiraled in the crystalline veins of the riverstones, a cool, sapphire song. And above all, it poured from the heavens each night, not in sharp, distinct points, but in shimmering, liquid streams that draped over the world, like a blanket woven from spun moonbeams. This was the realm of the starlight weavers, and among them Lyra was perhaps the most attuned to the quiet whispers of the celestial tapestry. Her eyes, the color of twilight just before the first star bloomed, held a perpetual wonder, as if she could see the very threads of light that bound the world together. She lived in a home carved into the base of a colossal, whispering willow, a tree so old its roots were said to remember the first sunrise. Her windows, instead of glass, were polished panes of moon petal, translucent and pearl-lustered, allowing the soft, diffuse starlight to filter in, painting her small dwelling in shades of silver and deep indigo. Tonight, Lyra sat by her hearth, not for warmth, for the Evermist lands were always temperate, kissed by gentle breezes, but for the comforting murmur of the glowing embers. These weren't ordinary embers, they were ember glows, fragments of fallen meteorites that had been sung into a state of perpetual warmth and soft luminescence by the elder weavers generations ago. They hummed a low, soothing tune, a lullaby of the deep earth. In her lap rested a lumen loom, a small frame made of gnarled willow branches, strung with threads spun from spider silk and infused with moon dew. Upon it she was weaving a dream catcher for a young sapling child in the neighboring village of Whisperwillow, a delicate net meant to gather the sweetest slumber visions and filter out the tangled anxieties of growth. Her fingers, nimble and accustomed to the fine work of light weaving, moved with practiced grace. She hummed a wordless melody, a tune she'd learned from the riverstones, a song of gentle flow and quiet patience. Each knot she tied, each thread she wove, was imbued with a shard of her own peaceful intent. It was a starlight weaver's calling to mend, to nurture, to guide. They were guardians of the subtle magic that flowed through the Evermist, ensuring the balance between the waking world and the realm of dreams, between the light of day and the deep, restorative dark. Lyra's own special gift, though, was not just in weaving the light, but in hearing it. Others saw the starlight fall, she heard its song. Others felt its warmth, she felt its heartbeat. To her, each star was a unique note in the grand symphony of the cosmos, and when one fell, it was like a tiny, urgent cry in the vast silence. Most fallen stars were merely light drops, small, transient bursts of energy that gently dissolved into the earth, nourishing the plants or becoming part of the river's gleam. But sometimes, rarely, a heart star would fall. These were different. They carried echoes of distant dreams, fragments of forgotten wishes, or even the faint murmurs of star children, the nascent constellations that bloomed in the deepest reaches of the night sky. It was these heart stars that required the true attention of a weaver. They needed to be found, listened to, and gently resung into the sky, or carefully embedded into the earth where their unique essence could take root and grow into something new and wondrous. Lyra had only ever seen one heart star in her young life, a tiny sapphire pulse that had hummed with the memory of a lost lullaby. She had spent a week singing to it, cradling it in a nest of moon moss, until its song grew strong enough to ripple back into the ether. It was a memory that filled her with a quiet pride and a deep understanding of her purpose. Tonight, however, the sky felt different. As she wove, a subtle tremor ran through the air, not unlike the distant hum of a slumbering mountain, but higher, more crystalline. The ember glows in her hearth pulsed a shade brighter, then dimmed slightly, as if holding their breath. The moon petals in her window, usually a steady source of pearlescent light, flickered with an unusual intensity. Lyra paused, her fingers still on the lumen loom, her head tilted. She closed her eyes not to shut out the world, but to open her inner ear to its subtle vibrations. There it was again. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer in the very fabric of the air, a whisper of something vast and ancient shifting. It was the kind of feeling that made the fur of the forest creatures stand on end, the kind of sound that only the deepest roots of the whispering willow truly remembered. Then it came. Not a gentle cascade of light drops, but a single, brilliant streak that tore through the night sky like a tear through velvet. It wasn't the usual silvery white of falling starlight. This was a color Lyra had never seen before in the heavens, a deep, resonant emerald, shot through with veins of shimmering gold. And it sang. Oh, how it sang! A melody so clear and pure, yet tinged with an indescribable melancholy, a song of longing and distant memory that resonated deep in Lyra's bones. It was a sound that made the air itself vibrate, causing the dewdrops on the moon petals to dance and the ember glows in her hearth to thrum with a sudden, anxious warmth. This was no mere light drop. This was no ordinary heart star. This was something else entirely. Lyra felt it with uncertainty that settled deep in her soul. This star was a Jisong star, a rare celestial traveler that carried not just an essence, but a complete, living melody, a piece of the cosmos's own forgotten music. And its song, as it streaked across the sky, seemed to be calling out, not for help, but for a home. The emerald streak plunged downwards, arcing over the shimmering expanse of the silent Maya, a vast wetland known for its luminous flora and ancient, slow-moving guardians. It disappeared behind the jagged silhouette of the crystal peaks, mountains whose facets caught and refracted every stray ray of light into dazzling, fleeting rainbows. The song, though fading with distance, still echoed in Lyra's mind, a compelling, sorrowful melody that pulled at her heartstrings. She knew, with an instinct as old as the whispering willow itself, that she had to find it. Not just for the star's sake, but for the sake of the song. A song star, if left unattended, could unravel the very fabric of the dream world it touched, causing ripples of forgotten melodies to haunt the sleep of the innocent, or worse, to silence the natural harmony of the land. Lyra carefully set aside her lumin loom. The dreamcatcher, half finished, seemed to pulse with a faint light of its own, as if understanding the urgency. She rose, her movements quiet and deliberate, gathering her supplies. First her moon mantle, a cloak woven from the shed fur of cloud foxes, imbued with the magic of invisibility and shadow and warmth in the deepest chill. It shimmered with a faint internal light, like captured starlight itself. Next her star lantern, not a container for fire, but a hollowed luminous gourd, within which a captured beam of starlight perpetually danced, ready to illuminate her path without disturbing the sensitive night creatures. She strapped a small satchel made of woven rush reeds over her shoulder. Inside she placed a small pouch of dream dust, shimmering motes collected from the wings of slumbering moths, used to soothe restless spirits or mend torn dreamscapes. Beside it, a cluster of whisperberries, dark and sweet, known to sharpen the senses and ward off the mists of confusion that sometimes lingered in the deeper parts of the Evermist. And finally her most precious tool, a chime reed flute, carved from the stalk of a forgotten songflower. It was said that the flute could echo any melody, and even, with the right touch, coax lost songs back into being. Before she left, Lyra paused at the entrance to her home, running a hand over the smooth ancient bark of the whispering willow. "Watch over my home, old friend," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustle of the leaves. The willow seemed to sigh, a deep, comforting exhalation that ruffled her hair, a silent promise. Stepping out into the night, Lyra was immediately enveloped by the cool embrace of the Evermist. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, blooming night lilies, and the faint, sweet perfume of moon moss. The forest, usually a symphony of rustles and chirps, was hushed, as if all its inhabitants were listening to the lingering echo of the song star's melody. Above, the usual liquid starlight still streamed, but it seemed to hold a new, expectant quality, like an audience awaiting the next act. She pulled her moon mantle tighter, its faint shimmer blending with the ambient light, making her almost invisible against the backdrop of the trees. The star lantern cast a gentle shifting pool of light at her feet, guiding her without intruding on the deep shadows. Her path led her away from the familiar, comforting paths of her village, towards the western edge of the Whispering Woods, the direction the song star had taken. The Whispering Woods were aptly named. Every breeze that passed through its ancient boughs seemed to carry hushed secrets, faint murmurs of forgotten tales. The trees themselves, with their gnarled branches and moss-draped trunks, felt like watchful sentinels, their roots delving deep into the earth, connecting them to a vast unseen network of life and memory. Luminous fungi bloomed in spirals up their trunks, casting faint, ethereal glows that danced with Lyra's lantern light. Tiny glowworms, like living jewels, pulsed rhythmically in the undergrowth, guiding lost travelers and illuminating the paths of the nightfolk. Lyra moved with a light step, her soft leather boots barely disturbing the mossy carpet. Her senses were heightened, her ears straining for any recurrence of the songstar's melody, her eyes scanning the forest floor for any trace of its impact. She knew the forest intimately, every bend of the path, every hidden glade, every ancient marker stone. But the songstar had fallen in the direction of the silent mire, a place she rarely ventured. The mire was not dangerous in the way a jagged mountain pass or a raging river might be, but it was a tricky guy. Its mists could confuse, its luminous pools could disorient, and its ancient guardians, though benign, preferred solitude. As she delved deeper, the trees began to change. The familiar whispering willows gave way to taller, broader stone oaks, their bark like petrified granite, their leaves a deep, shimmering bronze. Their branches intertwined high above, forming a dense canopy that filtered the starlight into even more diffuse, ghostly patterns. The air grew cooler, heavier, carrying the scent of rich, dark earth and the metallic tang of damp stone. Lyra followed the faint, lingering echo of the songstar's melody, which, though distant, seemed to resonate more strongly with each step. It was a mournful tune, full of longing, yet beautiful in its sorrow. It spoke of vast distances, of cosmic journeys, of an ancient heart seeking solace. She felt a profound empathy for the fallen star, a kinship with its lonely song. She reached the edge of the whispering woods, where the stone oaks abruptly gave way to a vast open expanse. Before her lay the silent mire, stretching out into the inky distance. It was a breathtaking sight, even in the faint light of the star lantern. Thousands upon thousands of lumen lilies bloomed across the water's surface, their petals unfurling to reveal inner cores of soft, golden light. They dotted the landscape like fallen constellations, reflecting the starlight above in a dizzying display. Between them, slow-moving currents carried luminous algae, creating shimmering rivers of green and blue light that snaked through the darker pools. The mist, true to the mire's name, hung heavy and low, swirling gently like slow-motion clouds across the water. It was this mist that gave the mire its trickiness. It could play with light and shadow, making familiar landmarks disappear and new, illusory paths appear. It could also carry the sleep spores of certain deep-dwelling fungi, which, while harmless in small doses, could lead to a deep, dreamless slumber if one lingered too long. Lyra took a deep breath, the cool, damp air filling her lungs. She looked up at the sky, trying to pinpoint the exact trajectory of the songstar. Its emerald trail was long gone, but the impression of its descent still felt etched into the night. It had fallen somewhere towards the base of the Crystal Peaks, those jagged, gleaming mountains that marked the western boundary of the Evermist. That meant a journey, across the mire. She took out her chime-reed flute, not to play, but to use it as a divining rod. The ancient wood, sensitive to the subtle currents of magic, would hum faintly in the direction of strong magical resonance. She held it out, horizontally, and waited. After a moment, a low, resonant hum vibrated through the reed, pointing directly across the mire, towards a particularly dense bank of mist that obscured the foothills of the Crystal Peaks. "So, that's where you've settled, little song," Lyra murmured, a determined glint in her eye. "Rest easy, I'm coming." Stepping onto the first lily pad, Lyra felt the gentle give beneath her weight. These weren't ordinary lily pads. They were float weaves, dense, fibrous mats of living plant matter, strong enough to support a person. They formed natural pathways across the mire, though their exact arrangement shifted with the subtle currents beneath the water. Moving across the mire was a delicate dance, a careful step from one float weave to the next, trusting the luminous algae to reveal the safest path. The silence of the mire was profound, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the float weaves and the occasional soft plop of a water dweller. The air hummed with the soft internal light of the lumen lilies, and the mist, swirling around her ankles, seemed to whisper secrets of its own. Lyra kept her gaze steady, her star lantern held high, cutting a small warm tunnel through the enveloping gloom. She had to be careful here. The mire was also home to the sleep spore mists, pockets of particularly dense, heavy fog that carried the soporific spores of the mire mushroom. If she strayed into one, she could fall into a deep sleep, and the songstar would be left to unravel its melody unchecked. She remembered the stories the elder weavers told of those who had ventured too far into the mire unprepared, found days later in a deep, peaceful slumber, their dreams filled with the gentle, but ultimately unhelpful, whispers of the mire mushroom. Lyra's shine-reed flute, held loosely in her hand, continued to hum, a constant low thrum pointing her onward. The song star was out there, somewhere beyond the shifting veils of mist waiting. She felt its song, fainter now, but still a persistent tug on her heart. It was a song that spoke of ancient places, of forgotten dances, of a cosmic sorrow that was both immense and deeply personal. It was a song that needed to be heard, understood, and ultimately, helped. She stepped from one glowing float weave to another, her path illuminated by the myriad lights of the mire, like walking on a galaxy of fallen stars. The mist swirled higher, sometimes obscuring her vision entirely, forcing her to rely on the chime-reed flute's subtle guidance and the faint, persistent call of the songstar. The journey was long, longer than she had anticipated, and the air grew heavier, colder, as she neared the foothills of the crystal peaks. The lumen lilies became sparser here, replaced by taller, reed-like plants with glowing seed pods that bobbed gently in the mist. The water beneath the float weaves grew deeper, darker, reflecting less light. She could sense the presence of the mire's ancient guardians, the slumbering sentinels, massive, slow-moving creatures that resembled moss-covered boulders, rousing from their millennia-long sleep only to shift their weight or stir the currents. They were harmless, but their immense presence could be unnerving, their slow, deep breaths causing ripples in the water that made the float weaves rock gently. Lyra pushed on, her determination unwavering. The song of the fallen star was a beacon, a thread pulling her through the labyrinthine mists. She knew that finding it was only the first step. Understanding its melody, learning its story, and then helping it either return to the sky or find its place in the world below, that would be the true challenge. And she, Lyra, the Starlight Weaver, was ready. The night was vast, the mire was deep, and the song of the cosmos awaited her touch. The night was vast, the mire was deep, and the song of the cosmos awaited her touch. Lyra took a deep breath, the cool, damp air filling her lungs. It carried the scent of wet earth, blooming night moss and something else, a faint, metallic tang, like distant thunder or a freshly fallen meteorite. The mist, which had been a soft, pearlescent veil, began to shift, revealing glimpses of the mire's true nature. Twisted willow trees, their branches draped with shimmering silver-green lichen, formed skeletal arches over pathways that seemed to appear and disappear with each waft of vapor. Beneath her feet, the ground was a patchwork of spongy moss and firm, ancient roots, guiding her steps like an invisible hand. The star's song, once a whisper, was now a clear, resonant hum beneath the surface of the mire's own nocturnal symphony. It was a melody both ancient and new, a lament woven with threads of cosmic dust and longing. Lyra felt it in her bones, a sympathetic vibration that made her own Starlight Weaver's heart ache with understanding. This wasn't just a fallen object, it was a lost soul, yearning for its celestial home. As she delved deeper, the mire began to reveal its hidden inhabitants. Tiny, luminescent sprites, no bigger than fireflies, danced in intricate patterns around the willows, their light painting fleeting constellations in the gloom. They darted close to Lyra, their gossamer wings creating miniature breezes that tickled her cheeks, as if curious about the human who dared to venture so far. She offered them a gentle smile, and a few of the bolder sprites landed on her outstretched fingers, their soft glow warming her skin. They seemed to understand her purpose, their own lights pulsing in agreement with the star's distant song. The path grew narrower, the roots thickening into gnarled staircases that led her down into shallow depressions filled with water that gleamed like polished obsidian. Here, the air grew heavy, thick with the scent of water lilies that bloomed only at night, their petals unfurling in slow, silent grace. The mire, she realized, was not just a desolate swamp, but a living, breathing entity, a sanctuary for creatures of the twilight and the unseen. Suddenly, a chorus of deep, resonant croaks echoed from the water. Lyra paused, a hand instinctively going to the small pouch at her belt where she kept her weaving tools, moonstone needles and threads spun from captured starlight. From the depths of the obsidian pools, a pair of large emerald eyes blinked open, followed by another and another. Soon, a dozen round, moss-covered creatures, resembling enormous toads with crowns of water lilies on their heads, surfaced. These were the Mire Keepers, ancient guardians of the bog's secrets. Their croaks were not aggressive but inquisitive, a rumbling query that seemed to ask, "Who are you, and what brings you to our heart waters?" "O Antinoni, Adanatantao, and Hibis Tesseke." Lyra, remembering the stories her grandmother told of the Mire Keepers, knelt at the water's edge. "Greetings, ancient ones," she said softly, her voice carrying easily across the still surface. "I am Lyra, a starlight weaver. I follow the song of the fallen star, the one that sings a lament from your deep." The Mire Keepers blinked slowly, their emerald eyes reflecting the starlight that managed to pierce the canopy. One, larger than the rest, with particularly vibrant lily pads forming its crown, shifted closer. Its croaks became a low, melodic murmur, a song of its own that seemed to speak of the Mire's long memory, of seasons passing and stars falling. Lyra listened, not with her ears alone, but with her heart, sensing the story woven into their ancient calls. They spoke of the star's impact, a tremor that shook their world, of the strange light it cast, and the sorrow that emanated from it. They had felt its pain, but did not know how to soothe it. "I seek to understand its story," Lyra explained, "and to help it find its peace, whether in the sky or here in the world below." The lead Mire Keeper nodded, a slow, deliberate movement that sent ripples across the water. Its croaks changed, becoming a guiding melody. It indicated a path unseen by the uninitiated, a current that flowed deeper into the Mire's heart. Lyra understood. They would not hinder her, they would guide her. She rose, offering a respectful bow to the Mire Keepers. As she followed the subtle currents they indicated, the mist began to thin even further, replaced by a soft ethereal glow that seemed to emanate from the very ground. The air warmed slightly, and the metallic tang grew stronger, laced with an undeniable sweetness, like crushed cosmic roses. The willow trees gave way to towering ferns, their fronds unfurling in intricate, glowing patterns. These were star ferns, ancient plants that drew their sustenance directly from the ambient magic of the cosmos. Lyra felt the power of the Mire surge around her, a gentle, welcoming embrace. Her own starlight weaver abilities felt amplified here, her connection to the celestial currents stronger. She could almost see the threads of starlight that permeated the atmosphere, weaving through the ferns, touching the water, and converging towards the source of the song. The star's melody was no longer just a hum, it was a symphony, a complex arrangement of notes that shifted and changed, revealing layers of emotion. There was sorrow, yes, but also a fierce, enduring hope, a spark of pure, unyielding light. It was a song of longing for home, but also a song of wonder at the world it had fallen into. She walked for what felt like hours, guided by the music and the increasing glow. The ground beneath her feet began to change, becoming less muddy and more crystalline. Tiny, glowing pebbles, like fragments of fallen constellations, glittered embedded in the earth, forming a natural path that shimmered underfoot. The trees here were different too, not willows, but ancient, towering sequoia-like giants, their bark swirling with iridescent patterns that pulsed with soft internal light. These were the sky pillars, trees that had grown so tall they were said to touch the lower reaches of the heavens, their roots drinking from the deepest wells of magic. As she rounded a particularly massive sky pillar, the world opened up before her. The mist was entirely gone, replaced by a clear, starry night sky that seemed impossibly close, its constellations blazing with fierce intensity. And there, in the center of a wide, shallow crater, lay the fallen star. It wasn't a fiery meteorite, nor a jagged shard of rock. It was a sphere, about the size of a small cottage, pulsating with an inner light that shifted through all the colors of the aurora borealis. Its surface was smooth and iridescent, like polished mother-of-pearl, but with veins of pure concentrated starlight running through it like rivers of liquid silver. It hummed with power, a low, constant vibration that resonated through the very earth. Around it, the crater floor was covered in a carpet of luminous moss and flowers that had never been seen before in the mire, their petals unfurling in impossible geometries, feeding on the star's radiant energy. The air here was warm, vibrant, and tasted of ozone and pure wonder. Lyra approached slowly, her heart pounding with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The star's song was now deafening, not to her ears, but to her soul. It poured into her, a torrent of raw, unadulterated cosmic emotion. She could feel its journey, its eons of silent flight through the void, its sudden, violent descent, and its current state of bewildered, lonely magnificence. As she stepped onto the mossy edge of the crater, the star's light intensified, bathing her in a soft, welcoming glow. A tendril of pure light, like a delicate shimmering vine, extended from its surface and gently touched her outstretched hand. It felt cool, yet vibrant, like holding a captured beam of moonlight. Through this contact, the star's story began to unfold in her mind, not in words, but in images and sensations. She saw glimpses of other worlds, nebulae spinning like cosmic dancers, galaxies unfurling like celestial flowers. She felt the endless quiet of space, the profound wisdom of time, and the deep abiding connection of all things in the universe. This star wasn't just a chunk of rock. It was a conscious entity, a fragment of the cosmos given form, carrying within it the echoes of countless journeys and the potential for new life. It wasn't a star that had fallen in the traditional sense. It had descended. It had chosen to leave its perch in the heavens, drawn by a powerful mysterious force, a whisper from the deep magic of Lyra's world, a call for a new kind of light, a new kind of knowledge. It had come, not through accident, but through a profound cosmic curiosity, a yearning to experience the vibrant, complex tapestry of a living planet. But the descent had been jarring. The transition from the silent, boundless void to the dense, buzzing atmosphere of the world below had left it disoriented, its light dimmed by the unfamiliar gravity and the chaotic energies of the mire. It was like a magnificent bird, accustomed to the infinite sky, suddenly finding itself grounded, its wings heavy, its song muffled. Its lament was not for its lost home, but for its inability to fully connect, to fully be here, to fulfill the purpose for which it had descended. Lyra closed her eyes, letting the star's light flow into her, weaving with her own starlight weaver's essence. She saw its purpose, to infuse this world with a unique cosmic energy, to awaken dormant magic, to seed new life and understanding. But it was trapped, its immense power unable to fully manifest, its song a muffled cry that only a few, like Lyra, could truly hear. When she opened her eyes, she looked at the star not just as a fallen object, but as a magnificent, conscious being. She understood the true challenge. It wasn't about sending it back to the sky, nor simply finding it a place to rest. It was about helping it integrate, to reconcile its cosmic nature with its earthly presence, to allow its song to fully resonate, to fulfill the destiny it had chosen. "You came here on purpose," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "You answered a call." The star pulsed, its light rippling in agreement, a silent, profound affirmation. Its song in her mind shifted, becoming a more intricate melody, a mixture of cosmic yearning and nascent terrestrial joy. It was eager, she sensed, to share its gifts, to weave its essence into the very fabric of this world, but it needed a bridge, a translator, a guide. And Lyra, the starlight weaver, felt a new purpose ignite within her. She was that bridge. She was the one who could help this lost cosmic soul unfurl its true potential in this new realm. The threads of starlight in her hands felt heavier, more potent, imbued with a new responsibility. She had found the star, understood its melody, and learned its story. Now, the true work began. She sat cross-legged at the edge of the crater, her hands resting gently on the luminous moss. She closed her eyes once more, reaching out with her mind, with her very essence, to the star. She began to hum, a soft, wordless melody, a song of welcome, a song of connection, woven with the threads of her own starlight magic. She imagined pulling the vibrant cosmic threads from the star, weaving them with the ancient earthy magic of the Maya, creating a tapestry that would bind sky and earth, starlight and roots, in a harmonious embrace. This was not a task for a single night, nor even for a single season. It was a grand undertaking, a cosmic dance of integration. Lyra knew this, and a quiet determination settled in her heart. She was ready. The star pulsed, its light softening, seeming to breathe with her, its song a gentle accompaniment to her own. The night was vast, the mire was deep, and the song of the cosmos had found its weaver. Her journey to help it truly belong had only just begun. Her journey to help it truly belong had only just begun. Lyra settled deeper into the embrace of the ancient roots, her fingers, extensions of her will, reaching out not to touch, but to sense the star's new song. It was a melody of pure, unblemished light, a counterpoint to the deep, resonant hum of the mire. Her task was to intertwine these two, to find the harmonies that lay hidden between the cosmic and the primordial. The star, a miniature sun nestled amongst the colossal root systems, pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic breath. Its light, once a searing beacon, had softened, adopting the muted, pearlescent glow of the mire's own bioluminescence. Yet it carried an energy the mire had never known, a vibrant, restless clarity that stirred the ancient slumber of the deep. Lyra closed her eyes, letting her consciousness expand, becoming one with the star's luminescence and the mire's earthen pulse. She began to weave. Her song was not of words, nor even of audible notes, but of intent, of connection, of gentle persuasion. She drew threads of starlight, iridescent and warm, and braided them with strands of root hum, deep and cool. It was a painstaking process, delicate as dew-spun silk, yet strong as the heart of a mountain. At first, the mire reacted with a slow, almost imperceptible tremor. The closest roots, thick as ancient tree trunks, seemed to sigh, a rustling sound that carried through the subterranean air. Tiny motes of dust, suspended in the still air, began to dance in the star's light, shimmering like forgotten constellations. Lyra watched, patiently, as the mire absorbed the first whispers of the star's presence. It was not a rejection nor an immediate acceptance, but a deep, slow consideration. Days turned into nights, and nights into weeks. Lyra remained in her sanctuary, a silent conductor of this cosmic symphony. She observed the subtle shifts. A new, vibrant blue-green moss began to unfurl on the root closest to the star, pulsing faintly in time with its beat. The star itself, in turn, seemed to deepen its hue, its edges softening, taking on a faint, earthy ochre where it touched the root bark. It was learning, just as Lyra was learning, about the other. The greatest challenge was not in connecting the star to the mire, but in teaching them how to speak to each other in their own languages. The star communicated in light and pure energy, a language of direct emanation. The mire, however, spoke in slow growth, in the absorption of nutrients, in the silent ancient wisdom held within its vast network of roots and subterranean waters. Lyra began to focus her weaving on translation. She took the star's brilliant energy and filtered it through the mire's deep memory, softening its intensity, shaping it into patterns of growth and resonance. She took the mire's slow, deliberate rhythms and infused them with the star's vibrant clarity, helping the mire to express its ancient wisdom in new, luminous ways. One evening, as the first chill of the mire's deep winter began to settle, Lyra noticed a profound change. The star's light, which had always been singular, began to fragment. Tiny, luminescent tendrils of starlight, like delicate, silver-blue rootlets, began to reach out from the main body of the star, slowly, tentatively, seeking purchase on the surrounding root bark. They were not destructive, but inquisitive, like a child's exploring fingers. And the mire responded. From the depths of the roots, tiny, almost invisible filaments of earthen energy, dark and shimmering like polished obsidian, reached out to meet the star tendrils. Where they touched, a spark, not of heat but of pure crystalline understanding, seemed to pass between them. A new, complex pattern of light and shadow began to play across the mire, like a living tapestry. This was the true beginning of the integration. The star was not just in the mire, it was beginning to each become in the mire, and the mire in turn was beginning to each become the star. As the weeks stretched into months, the mire transformed. The star's influence spread, not like a conquering tide, but like a gentle, invigorating rain. The subterranean pools, usually dark and still, began to shimmer with faint silver lights, reflecting the star's essence from their depths. Strange, crystalline fungi, glowing with inner light, sprouted from the root bark, their caps resembling miniature nebulae. The very air, once heavy with the scent of damp earth, now carried a faint, sweet tang, like ozone after a distant storm, mingled with the primordial scent of growing things. Lyra, though weary from her constant weaving, felt a deep satisfaction. But she knew this was just the surface. The mire was vast, its deepest layers holding secrets and energies far older than the star itself. To truly integrate, the star had to reach those depths, and Lyra had to guide it there. One morning, Lyra awoke to a new sensation. The mire was humming with an unusual intensity, a deep, almost mournful vibration that resonated through the roots and up into her very bones. The star, too, seemed agitated, its light flickering with an anxious pulse. Something was amiss. She focused her senses, reaching out with her woven song. She felt a disturbance, far below, in the deepest, most ancient layers of the mire. It was a presence, slow and immense, stirring from a slumber of millennia. It was not hostile, but it was cold, and it was reacting to the star's novel energy with a profound, almost geological bewilderment. This presence was the AD party of the mire, a colossal, sentient root mass, older than mountains, which had been in a state of near dormancy for countless ages. It was the mire's memory, its foundational consciousness, and it was now stirring, roused by the unfamiliar song of the star. Lyra knew she had to venture deeper than she ever had before, to mediate directly with the deep heart. She gathered her inner strength, weaving a protective cloak of starlight and root hum around herself. The path ahead was dark, even by the mire's standards, a maze of ancient, gnarled roots that spiraled ever downwards, into chambers where light had never touched. The journey was slow and arduous. The roots grew thicker here, forming colossal, arched caverns, their surfaces slick with ancient moisture. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of forgotten earth and slow-moving time. Occasionally she would pass through groves of glowing, phosphorescent lichen, their faint light illuminating grotesque, beautiful formations of crystal and mineral. As she descended, the mire's hum grew louder, more insistent, a multi-layered drone that spoke of immense patient power. The star's light, though still shining from above, seemed distant here, its energy struggling to penetrate the sheer density of the mire's ancient layers. Lyra relied on her own inner light, the cosmic song she carried within her, to guide her way. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she reached a vast, cavernous space. It was not a single chamber, but a network of interconnected hollows, formed by the entwining of roots so massive, they resembled petrified rivers. In the absolute center of this labyrinth, pulsating with an almost imperceptible, profound rhythm, was the deep heart. It was not a single entity, but an immense living tapestry of roots, glowing with an internal deep emerald light. Each root, thick as 100 felled trees, was a vein of ancient life, and together they formed a colossal, throbbing organism that filled the cavern. This was the mire's brain, its consciousness, its very soul. The deep heart did not have eyes, but Lyra felt its awareness turn towards her, slow and ponderous. It was a feeling like being observed by a mountain, by an ocean, by time itself. It communicated not with words but with images, with pure feeling, with waves of ancient memory that washed over Lyra, threatening to overwhelm her. She saw eons of quiet growth, of slow change, of the patient absorption of nutrients and light from a sun that had long since set. She felt the profound peace of undisturbed slumber, the contentment of ancient rhythms. And then she felt the disquiet, the confusion that had been roused by the star's sudden vibrant song. The deep heart perceived it as a jarring discord, a bright, insistent noise in its millennia of quiet contemplation. Lyra opened her own consciousness, projecting her woven song towards the deep heart. She wove images of the star, its radiant beauty, its life-giving warmth, its boundless energy. She showed the mire how the star could bring new forms of life, new patterns of growth, new understandings of the cosmos that even the ancient mire had never known. She explained that the star was not a threat, but a gift, a promise of new harmony. The deep heart responded with a slow, deep vibration that resonated through the entire cavern. It showed Lyra visions of its own past, of devastating cosmic impacts, of fires that had scourged the surface world, of the slow, patient healing that only deep earth and time could provide. It had learned to distrust sudden, brilliant things, for they often brought destruction before renewal. This was the crux of the problem. The mire's ancient wisdom was one of caution, of slow endurance, of protection. The star's wisdom was one of explosive creation, of boundless expansion, of dynamic change. They were two halves of a whole, but they spoke different languages of existence. Lyra realized she couldn't simply translate, she had to reconcile. She began to weave a new song, a bridge between patience and dynamism. She wove the star's potential for vibrant new life, but tempered it with the Maya's deep understanding of sustainable growth. She wove the Maya's ancient wisdom of endurance, but infused it with the star's capacity for radiant transformation. It was the most challenging weaving she had ever undertaken. Her fingers, though not physically moving, felt the strain of shaping pure cosmic energy and primordial earth memory. She poured her entire being into the song, her own light joining the emerald glow of the deep heart and the distant shimmer of the star above. For what felt like another eternity, Lyra remained, a luminous thread binding the cosmic and the primeval. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the deep heart's agitated hum began to soften, its vibrations becoming less anxious, more curious. The emerald glow around it pulsed with a new complex rhythm, no longer just its ancient beat, but a subtle echo of the star's distant song. Finally, a profound silence fell, a silence not of absence, but of deep understanding. The deep heart released a final gentle wave of feeling towards Lyra. It was not full acceptance, not yet, but a ponderous, ancient curiosity. It had acknowledged the star, not as a threat, but as an intriguing, albeit potent, new presence. It was willing to listen, to learn, to observe. Lyra felt a profound weariness, but also a deep sense of accomplishment. She had navigated the ancient heart of the Maya, and sown the seeds of understanding between it and the star. The hardest part was over, but the work was far from finished. The deep heart's curiosity was a fragile thing, easily swayed. As Lyra began her slow ascent from the deep heart's chambers, she noticed subtle changes in the mire, even at these depths. The crystalline fungi glowed with a slightly brighter, more intricate light. The air felt lighter, carrying a whisper of the star's sweet scent, even here. The mire was beginning to breathe with the star, even in its most ancient core. Returning to her sanctuary, Lyra found the star pulsing with a steady, serene light. Its tendrils of light had deepened their connection to the roots, and the roots, in turn, had grown to embrace them more fully. The deep heart's acknowledgement had ripple-effected upwards, subtly changing the entire mire's perception of the star. The seasons continued to turn above ground, but in the mire, time flowed differently. Lyra continued her weaving, her task now one of gentle maintenance and careful expansion. The star's influence began to extend further, awakening dormant energies in the mire, coaxing new forms of life from its ancient soil. Luminescent flora bloomed in previously dark crevices, their petals unfurling to mimic distant constellations. Subterranean rivers, once sluggish, now flowed with a gentle, star-dusted current, carrying vital energy to every corner of the vast root network. Yet, the integration remained a delicate balance. There were still echoes of the mire's ancient caution, areas where the star's energy was absorbed more slowly, or where ancient spirits of the roots stirred with a lingering apprehension. And there were still depths of the mire Lyra had yet to explore, forgotten chambers where older, perhaps even more profound, forms of life slumbered. Lyra knew her journey was far from over. The star was now a part of the mire, intertwined with its roots, acknowledged by its deep heart. But to truly belong, to become an indispensable, harmonious element of its ecosystem, would take more than just acceptance. It would take a lifetime of careful tending, of continuous weaving, of learning and adapting with every new ripple of starlight and every new growth of root. The cosmic dance of integration had only just begun its most intricate steps, and Lyra, the weaver of stars and roots, was ready for every turn. The cosmic dance of integration had only just begun its most intricate steps, and Lyra, the weaver of stars and roots, was ready for every turn. The first turn was a gentle one, a slow, deliberate waltz with the seasons. Lyra spent the ensuing cycles not in grand, sweeping acts of magic, but in quiet observation, in the patient listening that the mire demanded. She learned the whisper of the winter winds through the skeletal branches of the ancient willows, a mournful song that carried the promise of spring's return. She felt the slow, deliberate pulse of the earth awakening, coaxing tiny, emerald shoots from the thawing soil, a pulse she could now sense through the soles of her feet, thrumming up into her very core. Her initial days were filled with discovery. She found that the deep heart, while vast and ancient, communicated not in words but in sensations, in dreams that drifted into her mind like mist, in a profound sense of rightness, or disquiet. When a patch of glow moss dimmed, or a cluster of whispering reeds grew brittle, Lyra felt a subtle ache, a dull throb, that guided her. She would then kneel, pressing her palms to the damp earth, and weave. Her star-weaving became more refined, less a desperate plea for light, and more a gentle coaxing of cosmic energy. She learned to draw down not just the raw brilliance of starlight but its nuances, the soothing shimmer of a distant nebula for healing, the sharp, invigorating spark of a new comet for growth, the ancient, steady glow of a far-off sun for deep nourishment. These star threads, invisible to the mundane eye, she would intertwine with the Myers' own root threads, the intricate vascular system that pulsed beneath the earth. She learned to mend. A root, scarred by a lightning strike, would bloom again with her care, its silvery fibers knitted together with threads of starlight, stronger than before. A pool, stagnant and choked with decay, would be cleansed by a slow, spiraling infusion of lunar light, its waters clearing to reveal the darting minnows and the shy, iridescent beetles beneath. She taught the young saplings to reach for the sun with greater purpose, guiding their roots deeper into the earth to find hidden streams. She helped the shy nocturnal bloomers unfurl their petals in perfect synchronicity with the rising moon, their fragrances a delicate offering to the night. The Meyer, in turn, began to respond to her with greater openness. The nimble sprites, creatures of quicksilver and dew who had once flitted away at her approach, now sometimes paused, their tiny luminous bodies hovering just beyond her fingertips, offering her a fleeting glimpse of their intricate dances. The ancient, slow-moving bog turtles would occasionally surface near her, their wise, ancient eyes blinking slowly, as if in recognition. Even the deep heart itself through the earth would sometimes send up a wave of profound contentment, a deep, resonating hum that vibrated through Lyra's bones, acknowledging her efforts. Years passed, marked by the rhythmic ebb and flow of the Myers' life. Lyra grew not just in skill, but in spirit. Her hair, once a simple brown, now held subtle streaks of silver, catching the starlight like spun moonbeams. Her eyes, once a curious hazel, deepened, reflecting the verdant greens of the mire and the endless blues of the night sky. She walked with a quiet grace, her bare feet knowing every dip and rise of the marshy ground, her senses attuned to every rustle, every scent, every whisper. She was Lyra, the mire's weaver, its gentle guardian, its patient student. But the mire, like all ancient places, held its own deep-seated memories and its own vulnerabilities. One year, a shadow began to creep across its verdant heart. It began subtly, a faint malaise. The water lilies, usually vibrant, developed a brownish fringe. The frog's chorus, usually boisterous, grew strangely muted. A patch of the usually hardy bog iron moss began to wither, turning brittle and ash-gray. Lyra felt it first as a chill, a persistent, unnatural coldness that settled deep in her chest, even on the warmest days. The deep heart's hum, usually steady and soothing, was now ragged, punctuated by sharp, painful jolts. She knew, with the terrifying certainty of a shared consciousness, that something was profoundly wrong. She spent weeks searching, delving deeper into the mire than ever before, guided by the deep heart's distressed tremors. She followed the dying root threads, tracing the path of the unseen blight. It led her eventually to a place she had never known, hidden beneath a gnarled ancient cypress that seemed to weep perpetually into a dark, still pool. Beneath the cypress, the air was heavy, stagnant, laden with a palpable sense of despair. The water in the pool was not just dark, it was utterly devoid of light, reflecting nothing, absorbing everything. And from its depths, Lyra sensed a terrible consuming hunger, a slow, methodical draining of the mire's life force. It was not a physical creature, not a blight of fungus or pest. It was an ancient sorrow, a forgotten wound. The deep heart, in its vast interconnected memory, revealed to Lyra glimpses of the mire's distant past. Long, long ago, before the mire had fully bloomed into its current lushness, this place had been scarred by a great cosmic fall. A fragment of a dying star, heavy with entropy and finality, had plunged into the nascent mire, embedding itself deep within the earth beneath the cypress. It had been absorbed, contained, but never truly healed. And now, after eons, its lingering negative energy, its slow, inexorable decay, was finally resurfacing, threatening to unravel the very fabric of the mire. This was no mere tangled root or wilting moss. This was the mire's ancient grief, made manifest, slowly consuming its joy, its vitality, its very light. Lyra knew with a sinking heart that this challenge would require everything she had learned, and more. She would have to weave not just light and life, but woe and renewing itself into the mire's shadowed past. She began her greatest weaving beneath the cypress, its sorrowful branches reaching over her like weeping arms. It was a slow, arduous process. First, she had to understand the nature of the cosmic shard. It was not evil, merely exhausted, a fragment of a star that had given all its light and was now simply fading. Its presence created a vacuum, drawing energy from the living mire, a silent, unconscious act of self-preservation in its final, slow demise. Lyra realized she couldn't simply remove it. It was too deeply intertwined with the mire's foundational structure. She had to transform it. She had to weave a new purpose, a new kind of light, into its ancient sorrow. She spent days, then weeks, sitting by the dark pool, her hands submerged in its chilling, lifeless water. She drew upon the deepest wells of starlight she had ever summoned, not the vibrant, immediate light of new stars, but the deep, ancient, comforting glow of the oldest, most enduring constellations, the stars that had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. She wove threads of patience, of acceptance, of quiet understanding, for the fading cosmic shard. With her star threads, she began to create a shimmering, ethereal tapestry within the dark pool. Each thread was imbued with a different quality, the resilience of the ancient stones, the persistent hope of the sprouting seed, the endless cycle of death and rebirth she had witnessed countless times in the mire. She wove in the joyous chorus of the frogs, the vibrant hues of the water lilies, the gentle rustle of the whispering reeds, all the life that the fading shard was unknowingly consuming. As she wove, she hummed, a low, resonant melody that seemed to rise from the depths of her own soul, a song of healing and comfort. It was a song that spoke of cycles, of endings that were also beginnings, of darkness that held the promise of light. The deep heart pulsed with her, its pain slowly transforming into a steady, unwavering support, pouring its own ancient earthy energy into Lyra's weaving. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, a change began. The starlight Lyra wove into the pool did not merely reflect, it began to absorb the darkness, not to eradicate it, but to transmute it. The ancient sorrow of the cosmic shard, once a gaping wound, began to soften, to dissolve into the shimmering tapestry. The starlight embraced the entropy, not fighting it, but offering it a gentle, peaceful surrender. The process was excruciatingly slow. Lyra felt her own energy waning, her spirit stretched thin. There were moments when despair threatened to overwhelm her, when the sheer weight of the ancient sorrow pressed down upon her, threatening to pull her into the dark pool's depths. But each time, the deep heart would send her a surge of strength, a vision of the flourishing Maya, of the vibrant life she was fighting to preserve. And she would remember the promise she had made, to truly belong, to be an indispensable part of this magical world. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, something shifted. A faint, ethereal glow, like the ghost of a nebula, began to emanate from the depths of the pool. It wasn't the raw, blinding light of a star, but a soft, shimmering luminescence, a gentle, comforting presence. The cosmic shard, Lyra realized, was not gone. It had been transformed. It was no longer a wound, but a new kind of heart, a silent, serene beacon within the mire, radiating not sorrow, but a profound, ancient peace. The air beneath the cypress lightened. The weeping branches seemed to lift slightly. The dark water of the pool began to reflect the world again, albeit with a new, pearlescent sheen. And from its depths, Lyra heard a new hum, subtle yet powerful, a deep, resonant frequency that spoke of quiet contentment, of ancient wisdom finally at rest. The malaise that had gripped the mire began to recede, like a tide pulling back from the shore. The water lilies regained their vibrant hue. The frogs' chorus returned, louder and more joyous than before. The bog-iron moss, which Lyra had thought lost, began to unfurl tiny, healthy green shoots. The deep heart's hum vibrated through the entire mire, a song of profound relief and gratitude, echoing in Lyra's very soul. From that day forward, Lyra was not just the weaver of stars and roots, she was the mire's healer, its steady hand, its unwavering heart. She had faced its deepest wound and helped it find peace. Her connection with the deep heart became absolute, a seamless intertwining of consciousness. She no longer just felt its pulses, she understood its thoughts, its dreams, its millennia of memories, and its hopes for the future. Years turned into decades. Lyra became a legend whispered among the nimble sprites, a watchful presence felt by the bog turtles, a silent guardian known to every root and leaf. Her weaving became so intuitive, so deeply ingrained, that it was less an act of magic and more a natural extension of her being. She could sense the subtle imbalances before they took hold, guiding the flow of energy, gently nudging growth, ensuring harmony. The mire flourished under her care. New species of luminous moss bloomed in its shaded corners, their soft light echoing the transformed pool beneath the cypress. Rare, iridescent dragonflies, long thought extinct, began to dart through the air, their wings catching the starlight Lyra so carefully tended. The ancient willows, once stoic, seemed to sway with a newfound grace, their roots delving deeper, their branches reaching higher, full of vibrant life. Lyra herself changed, subtly but profoundly. Her silver-streaked hair grew long, flowing like a living waterfall, sometimes shimmering with starlight, other times dappled with the green of moss. Her skin took on the soft, earthy tones of the mire, her touch gentle yet firm, imbued with the ancient wisdom of the earth. Her eyes held the depth of the cosmos and the serene stillness of the bog, reflecting boundless patience and profound love. She was no longer just Lyra, the girl who had come to the mire. She was Lyra, the soul of the mire, its living embodiment of harmony. She didn't age in the way humans did. Time, for her, became a gentle current, flowing around and through her, leaving wisdom and grace in its wake. She had truly become an indispensable harmonious element of its ecosystem, not just accepted, but utterly integral. Her life was a continuous weaving, a seamless dance with every ripple of starlight and every new growth of root. One evening, as the twin moons rose, casting long, silvery shadows across the mire, Lyra stood on a patch of ancient, moss-covered ground, her feet sinking gently into the earth. The air was alive with the soft hum of insects, the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant croak of a frog, a symphony of life she had helped to nurture. The deep heart pulsed beneath her, a steady, joyful beat that resonated through her very being. She looked up at the vast star-dusted sky, a sky she knew intimately, a sky whose cosmic threads she had woven into the very fabric of this magical place. She looked out at the mire, vibrant and alive, a testament to a lifetime of dedication, of careful tending, of learning and adapting. She felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet completeness. Her journey, the cosmic dance of integration, had reached its most intricate, most beautiful steps. She was not just yinning the mire, she ayahuasced the mire, its starlight and its roots, its enduring heart and its gentle breath. With a soft sigh of contentment, Lyra slowly extended her arms, her palms open to the night sky, then gently lowered them to touch the earth. And as her fingers brushed the moss, a gentle ethereal light began to emanate from her, shimmering outwards, intertwining with the starlight above and the subtle glow of the mire below. It was a final, exquisite weaving, a silent promise. She closed her eyes, and as her physical form slowly dissolved into pure shimmering light, she felt herself merge completely with the mire. Not as a memory, not as a spirit that lingered, but as a consciousness that became one with the deep heart, a new pulse within its ancient rhythm. Her essence became the gentle breeze that rustled the reeds, the soft glow of the glow moss, the subtle shimmer on the surface of the water, the quiet strength in the ancient roots. Lyra, the weaver of stars and roots, had become the mire itself. And as the twin moons dipped low and the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, the mire stretched, vibrant and alive, forever holding the starlight in its roots, forever breathing with the rhythm of a cosmic dance that would never truly end. And in its quiet, magical heart, a gentle, eternal peace settled, cradling the world in its slumber.